Thanks for coming on, man. The great place to start is obviously your history with lifting. I know that you started powerlifting in high school.
Right, yeah.
What got you in the weight room?
In high school, I was on the golf team, and like
Nice.
I needed to fill a class hour, and I was eligible to do weightlifting. And I was like, if I like it, I'll stay with it. If not, I'll switch out. And I was like 16 at the time, and I had done I've been always involved in sports, just fitness wise, but I started getting into actual lifting, and I loved it. So throughout high school, my junior and senior year, I stuck. I stayed on top of the gym. I did train squat, bench, deadlift. Um, when I got to college, I got real involved in like the fitness community, and I did some like kind of like we didn't really do. I didn't ever do any sanctioned meets, but I did some like mock meets. I went to the University of South Carolina, and they put on some like small little powerlifting events. So I did those, and kept my routine going. Um, Once I got out of college, I kind of took a few years off of like training. I kind of like straight away, but I still did like some quick pumps here and there. I kind of stayed with just like staying active and stuff, but I didn't like really train as hard. I was working like retail, so I was kind of like just exhausted
Okay.
from like just being on my feet all day and stuff like that. But then I got back into training about 5.5 years ago or so. Back in 2018, I really started diving back in. I joined UFit in Tallahassee, and I was planning on just like trying to tone up. I was getting married that year, so like just trying to tone up a little bit. And I actually I signed up for like the personal training, like one session a month or so, just to kind of like have someone like hold me accountable. And they actually assigned me at the time. Shane Hunt was my like assigned personal trainer
You're
at UFit.
kidding.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah. It
crazy.
was it was crazy. Like, and this is back when he was like pretty young, like 20 or 21. Like he was like half the size he is now. Still really, really strong,
Yeah.
but way before he's gotten super strong. And he kind of got me like way back into powerlifting, and like I started getting strong, and then he told me about going to start competing and going to Capital City Barbell would be a better route, since it was kind of like at UFit, it's a great commercial gym, but it's not really, you hit your, limit there if you're trying to powerlift. They don't really have the best platforms, and they don't have like the best overall equipment and atmosphere. So he told me to go to CCB, and I signed up for the third annual CCB meet in 2019, which now they just had the eighth annual. So it was one of the kind of the first ones. And I loved it. And I joined CCB and been going to CCB, 4 or 5 times a week since 2018, and competed once a year since 2018. I competed twice in 2022. But I usually do a USAPL meet each year, and I do the Strong Nicole deadlift competition each fall in connection with everything. So that's kind of like the
Nice.
the background, and I love competing. I think it's fun. I love training for something, getting stronger each lift, and just sticking to it and getting strong.
Yeah, so I mean, I have so many things I want to ask you about that whole journey.
Yeah,
And it really sticks out to me, just before we rewind a little bit, that you just, the universe or whatever wanted you back on the powerlifting platform to walk into that UFit, which is a commercial gym.
yeah.
You're just thinking about getting married, and Shane Hunt of all people is your trainer. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Well, I wasn't even planning on doing the personal training thing at all. But
Yeah.
like something, I was like, some people they do personal training like 3 times a week. That's expensive. That's very I didn't want that kind of, but like they were like, oh, you can just have like, once or twice a month meet with someone. I was like, that sounds great. Get me back on track, review my lifts. And it worked out great. And I'm glad, Shane Hunt was assigned. I mean, this is crazy. I mean, they had, usually a personal trainers at commercial. Sometimes you have some really strong guys, but they're usually
Mhm.
more of the kind of CrossFit body types, more of the general fitness strength. You might have one or two
Yeah.
powerlifters. I mean, to have one of the greatest powerlifters in the world, you know, assigned was pretty cool. It really got me back into it.
Yeah. It's wild. Only in Tallahassee, I guess.
Yeah, oh, yeah,
So back in high school, was it just the weights that you fell in love with, or did you have like a coach for the like weightlifting class who was really kind of putting you on the right track too?
yeah. I had a great. It was a he. I never played football in college, but he was a football coach. I think he was like an O line or one of the kind of assistant coaches. Ironically, his name was Coach Curling. So I mean, I think it was, a fitting name.
That's
Um,
great.
he was great. Like he was really passionate about lifting. And he would like, if you really focus on trying to get better at a certain lift, he would meet with you and like really get you better at the lift. Like he really cared about people that really want to get stronger. So he was a great influence. I loved like, meeting some friends in the gym. You have good camaraderie when you're all lifting together, trying to get, sometimes competitive wise and sometimes just like, spotting each other, helping each other out. So it's a cool environment. But also like it was kind of like the first sport I was actually good at. Like I usually like played sports just for fun, like for recreational purposes. Like I was in the golf team. I was bad at golf, but I just had fun doing it. It's great exercise. But like I was actually good at lifting. Like, it just kind of was a weird sport that I was able to, get underneath the bar and be good at it. And I felt like it helped me with like just everyday life activities. It actually helped with golf. I feel like just being stronger, being more fit. So I saw the benefits, and getting stronger, and I just, I fell in love with it.
Yeah, it's funny how how motivating it can be to find that you're just already good at something, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah, I grew up running and doing triathlons, and honestly, I didn't really enjoy them, but I was naturally predisposed to them, and
so
I
nice.
liked being good at something, so I did
Yeah,
them way
it
longer
helped.
than
Yeah,
I should have, basically. But
it was,
yeah.
it's cool because I mean I just love lifting. I think it's just so fun, and I think you can always you're competing against yourself, competing against other people. But yeah, it's like you said, it's good to be good at something, and it's
Yeah.
something you can be confident and work on.
So what kind of program were you running way back then? Were you on a specified training plan or?
Yeah, the well, back in high school, like the coach would write up kind of like a mainly kind of they did power cleans mainly back then, like instead of deadlift, but he wrote up a squat and bench workout for us. It was kind of like a 8-6-5-3-1 kind of thing, kind of like a
Okay.
whole like bullseye workout or something. I don't know if he invented that or someone else did, but it was kind of took you across each rep. Then he really pushed like accessories like doing overhead press, machine work, just anything to get a at the end of the workout. In college, I wish like I'm not that old. I'm only 30, but like I feel like powerlifting programming has taken off tremendously in the past like 5 years. Like with everything being online, there's so much there's so many powerlifting coaches now. But back then, I was just kind of winging it when I was in college. Like I just kind of would show up and it was mainly a squat, bench, deadlift workout. I would do overhead press. But I was just kind of, I would every few weeks or every few month or two, I would kind of max out, see where I'm at, and then kind of, run it through again. But yeah, I didn't really ever have like a legit program. But I mean, I see the FSU kids at CCB, they all have these programs and stuff. I kind of wish I had that because I feel like it allows you to kind of, compare data and like they always, I video my lifts now, but back then I would only video like once every blue moon. But I feel like it helps when you video yourself, seeing the progress, kind of tracking yourself. Um, and so it's kind of, but then and I winged it a little bit for when I got to CCB. Um, but I got a coach back in 2021, 2022. Um, and he helped me really kind of get back on track, really know how to push it in certain times. And then right now I'm just kind of self coaching, but I'm using a lot of the stuff that my previous coach, presented to me, and it helped a lot to learn. And I coach my wife as well, so it's kind of fun to be able to see on the coaching side of things how to like different things work sometimes different things you got to try different things. So it's just kind of fun, a different aspect of lifting, the coaching side of things.
Yeah, I mean, you and Emily are in there. I think, multiple mornings a week, probably 4 mornings a week, right?
Yeah, her name Molly.
Oh, Molly, I'm so sorry.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
so sorry, man.
Oh,
Yeah,
you're welcome.
but
But
so
yeah, we try
did
to
what?
go there,
Yeah,
about we both lift about 4 times a week. We try to go together 2 or 3 times at least each week, which is it's a fun thing to do together and everything.
yeah. So did she get into lifting when you were getting back into it?
Yeah, so
Okay,
she's always been kind of like I was like just she would go hiking, just general fitness. But she kind of wanted to actually follow a fitness program, uh, yeah, right around our marriage, and like she was like, you're going to the gym a good bit. I'll just tag along, and she was kind of just planning on doing like a little 30-minute treadmill, 30-minute pec fly lunge workout thing. But then she started seeing me powerlifting, and she saw that I'm probably the best asset, and just coaching her that way. And I thought that she would just kind of have general fun with it and maybe stick with it for a few years. But she loved it. Like she was strong, and she got really she had tremendous progress starting out. And she signed up for the 2019 Strong Nicole, which is the deadlift only, which I'm a big fan of. I tell people, like, if they're on the edge of like competing, like that's a great meet to do because it's deadlift only. You get in front of people, you see how like you like the atmosphere. So she did that and just fell in love with the sport. And she's done one or two meets a year since then. We try to compete together. Sometimes we've done different meets, but we usually compete together.
That's really cool. Really
Yeah,
cool. I see
it's
you
fun.
giving her a lot of SSBs, but you do the SSB too.
Yeah. So we do a lot. We do a lot of the same things sometimes for like simplicity purposes. But sometimes she's I'll train her on different things than I'm doing different times with that.
My impression, I mean, just from in a limited way, see you in there, is you still kind of have preserved that sort of fundamentals approach where it seems like you stay pretty close to the competition lift.
Yeah, that's what I try to train that the most. Like I always, I've always have some sort of back squat in the each week. Sometimes I rotate between front squat and SSB just to kind of switch things up. I do some close grip benching just because I think that helps with the triceps and just getting stronger overall. And every now and then I'll do like more touch and go bench just because I thought you can get a little bit more weight that way. But I try to train as much pauses as possible because if you stray too much away from the pauses and you are about to have a meet, sometimes you lose a lot of weight and like you won't be ready for when the judge says press. You're like, oh, it's always longer in the meet than you anticipate. So I always like train as many pauses as possible. And then I train deadlift, try to do as best lockout as possible. Because I think that helps us. You can do the best you can. Not every lift's gonna be perfect in training, but training the comp standard is gonna help you out a lot when you go to compete.
Yeah, I have noticed that watching you lift too, is everything's pretty pristine, and there's a high level of effort, but it's within the technical standards that are necessary for the sport.
Absolutely.
One thing I get from filming my bench is like the pause always feels twice as long as it looks.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm a ref, so like I give the pauses. Sometimes it's people are like, oh, that's super long pause or whatever. But I mean, in competition, the bar has to be motionless.
Mhm.
And so some people they don't really train pauses, so they'll go up there. Their first bench is touch and go, so they get red lighted. And then some people they have really bad control, and so they actually get kind of sponged. They're like just the bar just kind of collapses on them,
Mhm.
and we had to they're kind of bouncing their chest. So we had to wait a few seconds for it to be motionless, and then they just can't get the
Yeah.
lift. They get kind of mad at us, but it's like we you need to train a better descent so that you can be in a better position to push it. But yeah, that pause in a meet and like sometimes if it's like a double platform meet and it's loud, you're sitting there like listening. You're like had to like really listen in for the ref. But I train to like kind of know when to press. That way, it's kind of like I'm just kind of going with the ref.
Mhm.
But if you train really long pauses, then in the meet it actually won't feel as long, but it always
Right.
feels when you're underneath that bar.
Yeah.
Uh,
Do you like whenever you bring it down on your chest, do you like say something in your head like Mississippi before you press or something?
I kind of just know like it's about one Mississippi count.
Yeah.
I know like right when it hits my chest that it's gonna be motionless. About a second later, every now and then if I have a bad descent or it's a little wonky, I'm like, all right, I need to kind of straighten this up a little bit. But that's kind of the general, about one Mississippi count.
Yeah. And a one count is very different than a one Mississippi count, right?
Yeah,
Like one,
absolutely.
yeah, for
You got
sure.
to kind of bring it
So,
right there and then be ready to push. 'Cause some people they'll jump the command. And powerlifting, like I tell people like jumping the commands like probably the worst thing you can do because it's just so obvious. You can get away with some infractions like if you have questionable depth. One judge might call it, one might. You still might get two white lights, but
mhm,
a majority of the time, if you miss a command, that's just all three refs are going to red light you. And so the commands are important, and it's the easiest thing to follow. It's the easiest thing to do. So it's important.
Yeah. And I think that one thing that I've underestimated, I mean, I haven't even competed recently, but just in anticipation of competing, I've been trying to hold the last rep of my bench sets before
Oh,
racking it.
that's smart. Yeah.
And that is like surprisingly challenging for
Oh
me,
yeah.
doing like a 3 or 4 count at the top. I don't know why, but
Yeah. And it's a good thing to train because we have some people that like they'll grind out a great rep, then they'll sling it to the rack at a competition, and
mm,
they get kind of frustrated, like, oh man, like I grinded it out, but it's like, well, you missed the rack command. And from a rest perspective, you didn't show control at the end of the lift. A
mhm.
lot of people can grind it out and just sling it back and complete the lift, but to show control is the ultimate goal from
Mhm.
start to finish of the lift. Even with squat, you want to show control coming out, lock your knees. Some people they come out, they like just look so shaky. They eventually lock their knees, but it just prolongs the rep. It kind of looks bad. They're not really doing the full standard, from the get go. But yeah, that the rack is always good to train that because it is sometimes it's hard. A lot of people don't realize like you got to fully lock out those elbows. Especially a lot of times when people rep, they kind of walk out but not fully. So it's good to train like you're doing, holding it out.
Maybe I'm just dumb, but it's a lot to think about. Like I'm trying to think, wait before I start my first rep, lock out and pause a beat between reps, but then I inevitably there's a set where like I don't pause at each lockout and I rack it too quick,
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have the same thing. I try to make it like a majority of the time I do it right. But yeah, sometimes you'll just slip up. Sometimes the weight's just way heavier. I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna do touch and go for this six because like I'm realizing the first two I paused, but now I can't pause the last four, but I want to get these
Yeah.
reps. So that's just kind of a good way to do it. I mean, I always try to hit depth on squat. Like that's something I never try to, cheat on because I mean that's if you I want to hit depth. That's like the main reason for a squat. But bench you can do touch and go and stuff like that. But
So how do you get into refereeing?
back in I think it was 2022, my wife started doing it back in 2021. Josh Chamblin, our gym owner, reached out to us and was like, we want to, get more refs in Tallahassee because he doesn't meet every year. And he's like, there was like we had a good bit of refs, but they kind of were like college kids and they've left. So he was like, I want to have some reliable refs in the area. And like, my wife got certified. I had a few meets in the calendar, like I was competing in. So I was like, I'm gonna wait till those are done, then I'll get my certification. But that's kind of how I got into it. I was recommended by Josh, and like, it's a pretty simple process. You pass like an online written exam, and then you sit with a ref for a session. And they just make sure you know what you're doing. They make sure you're not completely making crazy calls. And then there's like a background check, and then you can be certified. And like, I'm a state ref, so I can do state level. I can do national level meets, but only like side jobs like drug testing and equipment check. I can do technical control where you check, make sure they have the wrist wraps on right, stuff like that. Make sure they're before they go on the platform. But I can't sit in the national chair on a national platform yet. At some point, I'll probably get the national certification. I've done enough meets. I think you have to do like 6 meets or something like that, like over a 2 year span. So I'm qualified at some point, but it's a pretty hard test. And you got to sit with another national ref again. So I'll do that at some point. But that's kind of how I got into it. I ref about 2 or 3 times a year, and I love it. I think it's fun. It's a great way to get back to the sport. This is something different. Like I never thought I really would ref a sport, but it's fun. It's a good way to get into it.
Yeah, yeah, and it's cool that you see yourself kind of advancing to maybe be qualified to sit in the chair at the national level meets too.
Yeah, I think it'd be fun.
So it sounds and it's not I mean, would you compare it to studying for like the what is the what is the GRE or something for grad school?
Wait, it's not, yeah, it's not. I mean, it's the test is actually open book for the state exam. Is time, so you want to like have be familiar with the rule book. Because if you're not, like, you'll just probably run out of time. Search. I mean, you can search stuff, but you got to be somewhat aware because they ask some weird scenarios. But the test overall is pretty simple if you're familiar with powerlifting. I tell people that it's better to compete a few times than ref. That way you can understand. 'Cause, we're there to judge the list, but we're also there to kind of guide the lifters, especially like the local meets. Lifters come up with all these random questions of like how the meet runs and stuff. And like, if you have experience competing, you can really advise them well and be kind of, show them, different things and so that. So be helpful.
What that makes sense. What is the most obscure USAPL rule that you think no one would even have on their minds unless they're a certified ref?
I know like this is kind of a weird one. Like you know how like the racks can go in for like the big guys to go out. You
Yeah,
can recommend that one goes in, one goes out. Like which I think is just kind of weird. Like I don't know,
that
like
is really weird.
like I don't know why someone would do that.
Yeah,
There's a lot of like weird ones about like all the different records being set. I forget all the rules, but like if you're a certain age, but like it has to be your calendar year. But if you're a master's level lifter, like there's all these weird record rules. Um, those are kind of the weird ones. It used to be a little bit more weird whenever they like required certain T-shirts, but now they've been way more lenient with like the brands. It used to be like specific, had like a few different brands, but now they've as long as it's a powerlifting brand, and just a general fitness shirt, or you just can't have anything crazy on it. But it used to be really strict. You had to like make sure it was like a Rogue shirt or SBD shirt, which I
huh?
think a lot of players didn't like. 'Cause it was just kind of like we're competing at a local level. Like as long as
Yeah.
it's fitness equipment, we got to make sure it's up to comp standard. But most of the main brands make their stuff for comp standard. Um, Pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, and I could see maybe I could put myself in the shoes of someone who's pushing back against the shirt thing because it does. I mean, there's a little bit of price point to entering a competition, with getting the
Yeah.
equipment and the singlet. And then, I mean, those Rogue and SBD shirts are definitely pricey
Oh
just to
yeah.
play, yeah, yeah.
And they allowed
Um,
you to wear just a basic shirt, like anything that just solid in
okay.
color. So they allowed that as well.
Yeah.
But like it was kind of weird at because like sometimes lifters would have this was before and they changed the rule before I started refing, but I heard that like lifters would have one brand that was technically a legal thing for knee sleeves, but they had to be turned away. So it's kind of bad for the lifter that they were planning on
Okay.
using these. They weren't trying to cheat or anything. It's just like the same exact
Yeah.
material. There's some new up and coming brand. So I'm glad that they got way more lenient as far as the equipment that they allow, because I think it just makes a better experience.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny about that one rack tilted in,
Yeah,
that's gotta be a case of there was one person who asked for that and they made an exception for them and had to
yeah.
put it in the rule book, right?
Well, I know they just updated the rule book a few months ago, and they like made it to where it says like it has to be stated in the rule book for you to do something, because like before people were doing like weird stuff like they would do 2 reps, because at one point the rule book never said like you can only do 1 rep, so 1 rep max. So like they made it to where it's like way more verbatim as far as what can be done. And like on the back squat, like it used to be really vague. It pretty much just said like your hip joint had to go
Mhm.
below your knee surface. But supposedly someone did a front squat, which technically met the standards. And so they changed the rule book to say like the bar has to be on your back,
Yeah.
which is who would do a
Wow.
front squat if that was I mean, so I mean,
Seriously.
yeah. So there's
Yeah.
most rules in the rule book is because someone did something stupid or something
Yeah.
ridiculous. But the rule book is pretty like lengthy. I mean, the majority of it I just focus on like the actual lifts stuff, but there are some random stuff in there. Like I remember that one about the in and out was on the test, and I was like, I didn't even read about that. And I looked it up, and it's actually verbatim in the rule book. It states that you can, do one in, one out. So that's kind of a weird rule.
Wow. Yeah. What do you think about these knee sleeves that are basically knee wraps that have emerged in the past couple years?
I personally haven't used the Inzer ones, but I know a lot of people do use them, and I've seen it. They're really stiff. Um, I mean, I think I'm a big fan of like equipped lifting. I think it's cool that people do the knee wraps, wear the suits. I know a lot of people are like kind of against like equipped. I think it's like should all be raw. But I feel like if you're using the Inzer sleeves, you're kind of like equipped light, so you should at least have
Hmm.
like an appreciation
Definitely.
for lifting.
Yeah.
But I heard a lot of people like it because like supposedly just they feel like they have a better squat. I don't think it gives you. I mean, I've seen a lot of people use them. I don't think it gives you like a tremendous advantage. Maybe 5 to 10 kilos from what I've noticed. It's not like people put them on and like they can do 50 kg more.
Yeah.
I haven't seen a crazy. I think it is more. I think more than just like a standard, SPD sleeve or whatever. But I don't think it's just a crazy advantage to where it needs to be like eliminated or anything like that.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure originally Raw was Raw with wraps. Like knee wraps were a part of Raw, but I could be
Yeah.
wrong about that. Yeah.
Well, I think so. There is a division actually called Raw with wraps,
Hmm.
which you can sign up for, which is is Raw. You're allowed to wear wraps.
Yeah.
Equipped is like the full wrap and the suit, and there's
Yeah.
like different the suit and so like single ply, double ply, stuff like that. I'm not sure if at one. Yeah, I think you might be right. At one point, there may have been some sort of they allowed wraps. I know one. I think one of the federations, it was like standard. You could use wraps
Hmm.
with Raw. So if that was kind of the standard, I think that the stiff knee sleeves are less than that. But I have heard that they do help a lot. So I mean, if people like them, I'm fine with it. I mean, I have I like the. I feel like it would be. I've seen people have trouble putting those on. I don't want to spend like 10 minutes of my workout like putting my knee sleeve on. I love the SVD one.
Totally. Yeah.
So I mean, if it's not broke, I don't fix it. So I'm like, I like the SVD ones. I think they feel great. So I mean, I stick to that.
Well, I can't not make the observation that you probably have the largest quads of anyone I've seen in person. So it's probably hard to get a knee sleeve on that. Like,
Yeah, I mean, I haven't. Yeah, it'd probably be probably pretty difficult. So yeah, that's true.
yeah. Yeah, I guess it's probably all the front squatting you do.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. And actually, I did mean to ask, so you don't do any kind of back accessories?
I do a lot of like pool accessories. Like I do the lat pull down,
Oh,
rope
okay.
like that.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of RDLs. I've been doing those about a year and a half, like continuously. As far as like I do a main deadlift day and I do an RDL day.
Mhm.
I mean, I love RDLs. I feel like it's a great way to deadlift without doing too much, heavy weight. So it helps you recover when you do the main deadlift
Yeah.
day. I think it helps a ton with the flexibility, like just being able to really go down as far as you can and stay in that position. Um, I know that kind of works more of your top hip and your legs and stuff, but
Mhm.
a little bit of your back. But yeah, I mainly do machines for my back. I don't really do too much. I know people do the good mornings and they do some of the big, the bent over rows and stuff like that. I don't
Mhm.
do too much of that. I kind of just do a back pump at the end of my workout on upper body days. That's kind of like how, I've done seal rows. Have you ever done those before?
Oh, I love those.
Oh, those are awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where you get the bench up and you kind of, I've done the barbell ones where, I mean, that really hits the back of the back real nice. So, I've done those before. So those are fun.
Yeah, and they're nice over a barbell row because I mean, you're getting plenty of spinal loading, squatting and deadlifting, so it kind of lets you tax the upper back without the cost of like isometrically holding yourself in a position to row.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they hit, I think it's what's it called, the scapula of the back. I think it really hits that
Yeah. Okay.
area. I mean, you can't cheat a silver row. I mean, you're pulling
Yes.
from,
Yeah.
from the back. You can't just muscle it up with your biceps. Um, and I've been trying to incorporate some pull ups the past few weeks because like before I couldn't even do a pull up, but now I'm doing like 3 or 4, which is nice. I mean, it's a lot to pull up. I'm kind of a bigger guy, so it's like, but I want to be kind of like the powerlifter that can do pull ups, not the one that's
Yeah.
like, oh, I can squat 500, but I can't do a pull up. But
Yeah.
those are fun. I think pull ups are a great exercise. They work the whole upper body core. So
Pull-ups are hard, especially when you're doing them strict from like a dead hang. They're so
oh
much
yeah,
harder than kind of half repping out, you know.
oh
It's just a
absolutely.
different thing. Yeah. Yeah, I do a lot of pull-ups too.
Yeah,
I
I've
like
seen you
the
do,
neutral grip. Yeah.
you do a lot of dips too, right?
Yeah, dip for me, that's like the best accessory, I think, for bench pressing for me.
No,
Yeah, and I mean, sure, like I do Larson press too, and sometimes I'll do close grip, but dips,
oh
it's
no,
like it's taking my chest and triceps through a full range of motion than like barbell benching is. And
that's
I
true. Yeah.
just get a nasty stretch on my chest and my triceps every time I do it. So yeah.
I need to get back into doing dips. I used to do them a lot. I haven't done it recently, but I mean, it hits different. Like you feel,
Uh-huh.
parts of your muscle you never usually hit, in the standard bench press or tricep pull downs or whatever. So I think dips are great, great exercise.
Yeah, and I try to do them like I would be doing a competition bench. Like I pause for a beat at the bottom. And then what I started doing lately is actually locking out and holding the lockout because that is surprisingly hard to like
Oh yeah.
fully lock out your elbows. And I think it probably mimics because I have a hard time with that on the bench. That last like inch or so is where I'm weakest actually. So I think I've seen a little bit of carryover with making that smoother.
Oh nice. Yeah. I mean, yeah, locking out, especially holding it. I mean, even if you just hold a bench in place, that's gonna
Mhm.
work the triceps. So that's good.
What were your best numbers in college and where are you now?
In college, I did a 465 squat. That was I used wraps at the time. And then I did my bench was like a 330. And then deadlift was pretty weak. It was like 425. But my best numbers now, I've done a 551 squat in competition. I've done 567 in training. A bench, I've done a 418 in competition. I've done 435 touch and go.
Wow.
And deadlift, I've done 546 in competition and 551 in training. So my deadlift shot up tremendously. I think just being around stronger lifters and stuff. Because I mean, in college, I went to the main rec center at my college, and like I was one of the strongest ones there. So it wasn't really much pushing me.
Mhm.
But now, when you're surrounded by really strong people, it pushes you. You can see them doing it. With Instagram, you can see other lifters doing things. So you're just like, if they can do it, I can do it, and it kind of pushes you to get stronger. Um, and like, I mean, I've done a meet each year, and I think training for a meet, just having that meet on the calendar is something to work towards. Back in college, I feel like I looked at like online about meets, but like they didn't have as many as they do now.
Mhm.
Now there's like a meet, every month in Florida. And there's one or two in Georgia. So I mean, there's a meet every month within 4 to 6 hours of Tallahassee. There's like a meet every month in South Carolina. When back in the day, it was like 2 or 3 meets a year, like total for the Southeast area. So it's great that you have so many options. Like if you want to schedule a meet, you can do one. And I like I've done a few meets like in different cities outside Tallahassee because I usually ref the Tallahassee meet. So it's kind of been fun to go to different gyms and just see how they run the meet. I've been to a few. I did the Georgia State meet in 2022, which the Georgia State meet, that's a like it's a huge meet. They go all out. It's kind of like the meet directors that handle the Georgia one. They've done some national level stuff, so it's kind of like national meet light. So it's like a ton of lifters, and they go all out. So the some of the state competitions can be big. And they're fun to compete at.
And you have one coming up, I think in June. Is that right? Up in South
Right.
Carolina or North
Uh,
Carolina?
in North Carolina, yeah. So up right outside Charlotte. My wife's from the South Carolina area, right outside of Charlotte, but it's in Concord. So we're gonna go up there, see family, and compete up there. Excited about that. It's crazy that it's like next month. Like I signed up for it, like I think
Yeah.
around this time, and it felt like so far away. But I'm starting to kind of get back into doing some heavy lifting, and excited for the meet. I think it's gonna be fun.
How do you change your training at the kind of at this point to when you're focusing in for a meet?
So I'm about I think 7 weeks out. On Saturday will be 7 weeks. So I wrote like a 9 week spread. Before the 9 week spread, I was doing like some middle of the road rep training, like threes and fives on all of the lifts. I was pushing deadlift pretty hard, like on some singles and doubles. But now I'm kind of dialing in. Right, I'm wrapping up a 3 week little. I'm kind of messing around with SSB right now, doing some 3x4s with heavy squats. But starting next week, I'm gonna be doing some like RPE 9 singles on all the
Oh,
lifts. And then 3 weeks out, I always like do like a I do 2 SPD days leading up to the meet. Where one is where I take forever, like because you never know at meets. Like sometimes they run really really fast, or they run really really slow, depending on kind of like how the platforms are run, how big the flights are. There's not really in between. It's gonna be either slow or fast. So I always have an SPD day where I max out, but I I'll wait like an hour after I do my squat, and then I'll warm up again for my bench, just to kind of mimic that a slow meet, and then I'll do one right before the 2 weeks out where I go real fast. Like it's like, like I'm gonna, if I was to be in a panic mode, like I, didn't time it right as far as the flight above me, I do a kind of a fast warm up. I squat, doing a fast bench. Just so, because I've been at meets where like the flight ahead of you goes, it flies by, and you're kind of caught like, oh, I need to do two more squat warm ups, but sometimes you just gotta get past it and go out there and
Wow.
get your first lift in. And then some meets, it's just dragging. You feel like
Yeah.
oh man, like I'm getting kind of just sore to standing around. I kind of want to get back in the, it's just
Yeah.
it's good to train both. But I go heavy 3 weeks out, like heavy singles and stuff. And I'm doing some kind of like almost heavy singles about 6 weeks out. So that's kind of how I geared towards it. Excited.
Yeah, that's really, I mean, that's something that you wouldn't, that only a veteran lifter would recognize they need to prepare for, doing the slow pace and then the fast pace.
Yeah, and like I mean, I learned that just kind of through doing a few different meets.
Mm.
And I'm a big believer in the SVD. I learned that from my previous coach was Chris Austin. I don't know if you met him.
No, no.
He hasn't been there in a little while, but he was my coach, and like he really got me to doing like SVD days. Like every Saturday was an SVD day. And I still do that sometimes. I usually do mainly leg days on Saturdays. But a few times during the year I do SVD days because it's if you don't train them, then when you go to the meet, you're not used to like benching between your squat and deadlift,
Hmm.
and it can kind of throw off your bench a little bit. I don't think it's good to train them all the time because I feel like it's kind of hard to really capitalize on bench and training if you squat all the time before it. But it's
Yeah.
important to do the SVD days here and there just to kind of know how to, because sometimes by the time you deadlift you're a little tired. Sometimes when you go to bench you're like still kind of recovering from your squat, so it's good to train all three in the same day to be ready, ready for meet day and everything.
That makes a lot of sense. You know, honestly, that's one of the things that gives me pause about competing is there's a strong part of me where I just want to know what I can lift for one lift. And I'm certain that to competition standard at the end of that day, even just going squat to bench, I'm not going to be expressing the strength that I could express if I just went in there to test my bench or deadlift.
Yeah. And a lot of people, they think that like if they just show up on meet day, they're gonna have the best list of their life on all three. And it's like
Yeah.
sometimes, I've had the best totals and I've had the best single lift, but I don't think I've ever done a meet where I've had like all three PRs on all three
Yeah.
lifts. Because it's just not, I mean, you're not in your own, you're on their schedule as far as when to lift. You sometimes you're nervous, you may not have eaten as much the day before. Sometimes it's just kind of mass chaos, so you don't really get the best warm up as you would just in normal training. You got to just kind of account for that. But I just like to have fun in the competition. If I miss, if I'm not like, for example, last meet I did a 403 bench, which like to me was kind of underwhelming. But I was like, it's fine. I did a 403 bench, and then I pushed
Yeah.
deadlift, and I got a PR on deadlift. And so it's like sometimes you just gotta, some things are gonna be good, some things are gonna be bad. But I think some lifters they get so caught up in like on the day of I'm gonna, be Superman, and that's kind of a bad mindset to have. I mean, some people are really very performative and they know how to dial in. They're really elite lifters, but generally you're gonna be hitting a lot of what you already have hit in training, and sometimes maybe a little bit less because you're doing all three in the same day.
That makes a lot of sense. Do you base your attempts off of how those SBD days go for you 3 and 2 weeks out?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in like the opener should be like super easy. Like, I mean,
Hmm.
something you can do for three, on a bad day. Because you want to like kind of establish a, you want to go out there, hit your opener, get the books, and then your second is like kind of like the PR range or something you came there to hit,
Hmm.
and then third is either a makeup of the second or really pushing it. And so that's kind of the way I do it. I like the some people they like to push a little bit of the opener, but I'm like I just like getting the books. I feel like that gives me a nice safe lift. It also looks kind of, I mean, from a rest perspective, I like when people come out and they have a great opening lift. If you are a little, wonky on the first lift, rest kind of remember that. I mean, it's kind of like
Sure.
especially if you have like a small infraction, they're gonna be kind of judging you a little bit closer the next time, and it just kind of sets you up for like, to be judged a little bit harder, I guess. But if you come out and you look great, it's gonna be in your favor.
Yeah.
So deadlifts always give me like anxiety because like I feel like anything over 450, even in training, is always gonna be heavy. I feel like 450 feels the same as
Yeah.
550. And so like when I'm in the warm-up room, I'm like, oh, like should I lower my opener? Should I lower my opener? I'm like, no, I'll go out there and I'll hit it. I'll be fine because usually
Yeah.
your opener flies up because like deadlift has the most energy. Because
Uh-huh.
you're ready to get out of there, but the crowd's really kind of that's when the crowd really comes alive. So it's like, I always get nervous though. And I get nervous before every opener, but once you get in the
Yeah.
books, it's like you're able to really kind of dial in and push it.
Yeah, that's funny about deadlift that maybe it's just because you're starting without the eccentric, but there's just a certain percentage that when it gets over, it just automatically feels harder than it actually is, you
Oh
know?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I feel like as the lift goes up, different weights like 450 feels different than 425, obviously. But I feel like off the ground, I'm like, man, this is
It's all the
heavy.
same.
Uh, yeah,
Yeah.
I've gotten better at deadlift the past like year and a half. I used to be like bad at deadlift. Like I used to like my first meet in 2019, I did a 418 deadlift, which is pretty low. Um, but like I've gotten way stronger. I feel like I've gotten better at just dialing in. You just got it's sort of I think it's more in your head sometimes. You just gotta dial in and just keep pulling. Um, but yeah, I've had way better success in deadlift. I used to just there would be times where I would just outright not be able to break the ground on lifts I was really planning on getting for doubles or triples. But it's been fun kind of working with it and getting better at deadlift. It's like a slow progress, like very
Yeah.
small, like linear, but as long as it's going up, I'm happy with that.
Absolutely. So you think for you, is it mostly a mindset change, or did you also change the way you were training deadlift?
I think it's a mindset change, and like I think when I worked with Chris, like I think my biggest success with him was him helping my deadlift. He really helped me just kind of have a little bit more grit in my deadlift. I feel like if there's a day where I thought it was a little too hard, he's just like on a squat you gotta grind it up. But a
Yeah.
deadlift is like, all right, this is gonna stay right there. And I feel like I kind of lacked a little bit of grit. I lacked a little bit of like intensity, but he kind of helped me push it, gave me more confidence in my lift. And now when I deadlift, I'm like, I'm ready to dial in. I feel like I'm doing this for 1 or 2 reps. I can make this happen.
Yeah.
Especially like just trusting yourself to do those doubles and triples. Because if you can do it for one, relatively easy, you can keep it going for a couple more reps. And just trusting that it'll go up. And just keep on pulling. That's the main thing.
Yeah. And I've never seen you use straps. You always pull conventional mixed grip. You make it as hard on yourself as possible. You hold
Yeah,
the lockout. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I squat high bar. I bench with like absolutely no arch, and conventional deadlift. So like I go the hard route, but I mean it's kind of like how I've always done things. So I just stick to
Yeah.
it. I'm not competing for any national world titles. So
Yeah.
if I'm losing out on 2.5 kgs, I'm fine with that. But um, it's fun and yeah, I like conventional deadlift. I did sumo for a little bit, but I feel like it's just for me. I don't know. It's just like sometimes I just couldn't get off the ground.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, some of the guys at our gym are like excellent at sumo. I mean, it's crazy. I've seen great progress, but I think conventional day by day is like you just go up and get it. Yeah. Do you compete? Do you lift sumo or conventional, or do you
I've
do
always
both?
done conventional.
Conventional.
I've tried sumo a couple times. If I'm doing hook grip, my hands open when I hit my thighs, and if I'm doing mixed grip, my knuckles hit my thigh, and I have trouble locking it out. I've
Yeah,
tried doing like a closer stance sumo to where I lock it. I kind of when I lock out, my hands are outside of my hips, but um, I figure that if I keep training conventional, that'll probably carry over to my sumo. But if I start training sumo, I don't know if I'll be able to go back to conventional and pick up where I left off.
that's true. Like my wife, she lifts sumo mainly. She does some conventional stuff like when we're not really training for a meet at the time.
Mhm.
Um, but I mean, she used to just only do conventional, but she started doing sumo, and she does way more weight that way. Um, and like I feel like sumo was almost a little bit more athletic. You had to be like
Mm.
just really in the zone to do sumo. But I feel it was kind of ironic because I feel like the conventional is a little bit more athletic of a actual motion. But I feel like you
Mm.
got to be a little bit more athletic to do sumo. It's kind of, I
Yeah.
mean, the best lifters can do both. I mean, I know Shane Hunt can do like both very, very well. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, but it's I don't a lot of people like rag on sumo, but I think it's fine. I think it's hard to really get that wedge. Um, so I mean, I think sumo is just as hard as conventional. But if you are really good at sumo, and train it and make it happen.
Absolutely. It's within the standard, it's within competition standards. It's so, I mean, people say sumo is cheating. It's fundamentally not cheating. You're allowed to do sumo in the sport. It's
Yeah,
so dumb that whole people get to stick up their stuff because they're worried about, they pull conventional, they can't figure sumo out, and they feel like getting, they're leaving pounds on the table to other people, I guess. But
yeah. I mean, I think some lifters they feel like they need to do sumo, but they are strong at conventional, and that's some people are just strong at conventional. And if
yeah,
you're strong at conventional, just let that roll. Like ride with it.
yeah.
Um, but I mean, I think it's worth trying both just to see if you're better at one or the other. I've heard that sometimes some people think that sumo is a little safer, a little for easier for recovery. Um, I haven't done them both enough to know either way.
Mhm.
But I mean, if you can pull, in that stance, make it happen.
Yeah. Well, I mean the setup like you touched on, the setup takes the athleticism, right? Because
Yeah,
there's a very narrow margin for error with your balance, your foot position, um, and yeah, all of that. And even going down to the bar, you can throw yourself out of position if you don't go down to the bar the same way, right?
absolutely. And I feel like just from like a referee's perspective and just being at meets, I feel like if someone doing sumo, if they don't have it set up perfectly, they're more likely to just not even be able to break the weight off the ground. Whereas
Right.
I feel like a conventional lifter, they can always at least like tug it, unless it's just crazy amount of weight. They can at least tug it and get it going and have a
Hmm.
chance at it. But sumo, there's small room for error. But if you can get it locked in and pull, with my wife with her sumo, there's days where she just can't quite lock it out, or sometimes can't wedge. I tell her, just try to do the most weight you can, within that range. But
Hmm.
I have noticed that sumo does have a little bit more room for error, and you got to kind of account for that. Getting off the ground or during the lockout, because if one thing's off, it can kind of hinder the whole lift.
Hmm. And I have to say, as much as we're talking about sumos within the rules, it's legitimate. You, as a guy who's squatting high bar, benching without an arch, deadlifting conventional, there is something that feels more badass about that, watching that happen, like just
Yeah,
from an outsider's perspective.
yeah. I mean, I always train high bar. I feel like my body is kind of more designed for it. I feel like it just kind of
Yeah.
rests better. Like if I was to do low bar, my torso is actually pretty small, so I feel like I would just be kind of hunched over.
Yeah.
But I mean, back in the day, I feel like when you were at the gym, like I feel like generally at the gym or whatever, you would see kind of like way more high bar squatters.
Mm.
But I feel like the trend is way more like I feel like I'm one of the only high bar squatters at a meet. Everyone's
Yeah.
doing bar.
Yeah.
I walk out there and people are like, "Why are you doing high bar?" I'm like, I don't know. I just train that way. I don't think I
Well, it
could
feels
actually.
right.
Yeah, it feels good. So
Yeah.
it's fun.
Any weight you'd gain from squatting, you'd hypothetically gain from squatting low bar, you'd probably lose because your elbows would hurt so badly for bench, honestly. That's my opinion.
That's true. Yeah,
Yeah.
I have heard a lot of people have elbow pain or that kind of. I think there's a little bit more risk for injury with low bar just because
Mm.
like there's a little bit more moving pieces.
Yeah.
High bar, you gotta be the main thing is you gotta be careful that you don't sink your squat too much because that can kind of tug on the hips. I've had some lower back
Yeah.
pain. Usually from warm ups because like you're just not taking it seriously. You're just like I'm just going through the
Hmm.
motions, and if you go dip too far down, like it's just kind of like your lower back is being tugged by your legs.
Hmm.
So you gotta be careful that you kind of keep your legs tight on all whatever weight it is. But other than that, I feel like it is a little bit more of a safer lift as far as like recovery wise and just not as many moving pieces in the up and down motion.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you literally do no accessories for your squat except for other kinds of squats like SSBs and front squats.
Yeah, so
Man,
pretty much,
that's
yeah.
crazy. Yeah.
I do random stuff like I do the sled and that kind of stuff, but I
Okay.
don't.
Yeah.
And I do belt squats sometimes.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
love those, and I think belt squats are excellent for like a couple weeks ago I was at the gym. My back had a weird like kind of spasm thing going
Mm.
on. I did 440 on squat, which is usually very routine, and like I was like my back was just hurting. I was like I
Hmm.
don't feel like pushing it today. I just want to get a good leg pump. And I went over to the belt squat, and my legs felt great. This is my back, and
Yeah.
you're gonna get an excellent leg pump with that belt squat. And I
Yeah.
think, I love the belt squat for just kind of an alternative. But I don't
Yeah.
do too much of the. A lot of people do those leg extensions and leg curl. I don't really mess around with that machine.
Yeah.
Uh, I do some goblet squats. I like the kettlebell.
Hmm.
I'll do some swings sometimes, but I like squatting, so I think that's the kind of the
Yeah.
best way. Just do some sort of variation of squatting.
Yeah. Well, it's clearly working for you. You got a very impressive squat.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So do you have, and you may be superstitious about this, so you might not want to share them publicly, but do you have numbers in mind for this upcoming meet for yourself?
I would like to hit like a 540 or a 550 squat again. I hit 530 last year, which is kind of a down squat from. It just wasn't. I wasn't feeling it that day. My second lift was my first lift was like I think 496 or 501, and it flew. And I did 518 or 523 as my second, and it was just really heavy. So I called it at 530, which is smart because 530 was a grind. But I would like to hit 540 or 550 again. For bench, I would like to do 413 or 418. And for deadlift, I would like to do like a 551, or I think is the number 562, whatever the 560 range
Kilos.
is.
Okay. Yeah.
I would like to kind of push my deadlift. I think my deadlift is in a good range to push. But as long as I'm within like maybe 5 kgs of any of those, if I have a great bench day, maybe push the 418, 424. Squat. I think if I can, I think I have a good day, I can do 551. It would be cool to do 556. That'll be a PR. But kind of those are kind of the range of the numbers I'm looking at, um, that I can get.
Another veteran's move to have your expectations fall in a range.
Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
kind of good to, kind of, I'll probably know my openers pretty soon, and then I'll kind of plan my second attempts. And my second attempts will probably be all those kind of the lower range of those numbers. And then if I'm feeling really good, third attempts will be the higher range of those. So hopefully it all falls in place. I feel like the past year, because I competed back in July
Hmm.
last year. I feel like I've stayed the healthiest I've ever stayed. I haven't really hit any one rep PR since. I haven't really gone super heavy since then. Um, I've hit some like overhead press PRs and some front squat PRs and stuff like that. But I'm excited to see, if I can stay healthy, I feel like I can push some good numbers.
Yeah. I mean, that's got to be the nice thing about competing once or twice a year is if you're doing 4 meets a year, you're a lot less likely to see progress, right?
Yeah, I think some people they compete too often, and it's like I think it's smart to compete once or twice a year for like 2 years in a row when you're starting off just to get more meet experience. But if you're competing 3 or 4 times a year, I mean, you can do it if you want to just have fun and doing it. But if you're hoping to get a new PR each time, it's unlikely. I mean, you're just gonna have
Yeah.
days where it's not as good, and then it's just even though like a 4 month block between the two meets, you just might not gain much progress. Um, I wish like powerlifting you could compete more often and actually have success like each time, because like that's the one
Yeah.
thing I don't like about powerlifting is like you can only compete once a year. It's like your one time. I feel like that's what people put so much effort into that one day and making it perfect. Whereas like marathon running or 5K or 10K, what a lot of people would like to do. If you have a bad 10K, there's another 10K the next day. There's another 10K
Totally.
week, and you can actually do it.
Yeah.
Now a marathon you might want to wait. I don't know how long people wait
Sure.
between those. Shorter than 4 months to 6 months.
Yeah.
But I wish powerlifting there was a way to compete more often. I mean, that's why I like the deadlift competition, because I can like kind of throw that into the year.
Yeah.
Uh, I wish we had like maybe a bench press competition, or I wish we had like a random day, like an overhead press and
Yeah.
a front squat competition. Or I don't know, something random, because I feel like you know that's one thing about powerlifting is like you can only compete once or twice a year.
Yeah.
I think that's why a lot of people kind of fade away from it as you're going. Just like it's not it. You want to compete, you want to do more stuff, but you kind of got to plan around that one or 2 days a year.
Yeah, there used to be a strength lifting federation. I think it was associated with starting strength. And so that was a competition where you squatted, overhead pressed, strict pressed, and then did a conventional deadlift.
Oh wow.
So it was like almost powerlifting with overhead press instead of bench. But I think that those kind of faded out. Maybe they weren't getting enough participation. But I agree with you. I would love to see more kind of foundational lifts contested.
Yeah. I think it'd be fun. I think a lot of people get burnt out with powerlifting. I mean, I love it. I love the
Yeah.
consistency of it. I love staying to it. But I think some people do stray from it just because they hit what they want to hit and they kind of find something different.
Yeah.
Um, but I wish there were some kind of like I did a CrossFit little like charity event back in October. It was called like Bench for Boobs. It was like for like breast cancer awareness.
Uh-huh.
Like it was like you did like row machine alternating with like high rep bench. And it was just fun. Like it was just fun
Oh,
showing.
wow.
There
Yeah.
was like no pressure. You could pick whatever weight you want to do on bench. I did like one of the highest weights compared to. I was awful at the rows, like the row machine. I was like
Yeah.
brains out because I wasn't used to that. But the bench press was fun. It was something different. It was fun. I wish there's like some more events like that where you just kind of show up and lift heavy stuff. I mean, I guess it's kind of like
Yeah.
strongman. They have a little bit more variety in their wheelhouse of events. But I think it'd be kind of interesting if like powerlifting had like maybe 8 or 9 events to choose from, and like
Yeah.
the day of the meet they choose 3. So
Uh,
if people train all sorts
oh,
of different.
wow. And you don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be kind of cool. Um, I remember in college they had this thing my freshman year and sophomore year called the octathlon, and it was like really weird stuff. It was like leg press your body weight for how many reps, or like maybe double your body weight. They did like kettlebell, like some sort of
Uh,
percentage of your body weight swings. There was a swimming thing, a running thing. There was like a push up thing. It was cool. It was 8 events. It
yeah.
was fun. It was just like you could just kind of dial in on one of them or just have fun, and but it was something different than like the standard squat bench deadlift.
Yeah, it's nice to be able to test yourself, but have some variety in the parameters of the testing, right?
Absolutely.
Well, hey man, you've got the reffing credentials, you've got the firsthand meet experience. You could start your own federation, your own
Yeah,
competition.
something special.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm excited for your meet in North Carolina. Best of luck there. I look forward to hearing how it goes. And secondly, thanks for coming on.
Oh, no problem, man. This is great. I
Yeah.
hope your podcast takes off. I've seen a few of the clips of the other interviews, and I saw some of the history lesson thing of
Uh,
John Paul Sigmerson.
yeah, yeah.
So I hope you keep doing podcasts and keep doing the history stuff. I think it's cool.
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate it. I kind of needed a new creative outlet here, so I've really been enjoying this, but
That's good.
yeah.